Like use 2 through 33, sound 1A through 7. On deck standby Q actors. Electrics, kill the blue run lights, please. Like you 2 and sound 1A. Go.
From Arizona Theater Company, this is Hang in Focus with your host, John Daniels.
As someone that grew up in Arizona, it's a great way for us to share the work that we do worldwide.
And featuring co-host Chanel Bragg.
That is our responsibility, to reflect what is going on in the world.
Streaming live from the State Theater of Arizona.
So let's do it. Let's really use this moment to re-envision ourselves.
Welcome to Hang in Focus, live with Sean Daniels.
This is the new Arizona Theater Company. I'm just glad that you're here.
This week, Sean welcomes Howard Sherman, producer and author of Another Day's Begun, Thornton Wilder's Our Town in the 21st Century, and Phoenix's own hip historian and host of the Arizona History Happy Hour, Marshall Shore.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Hello, Chanel. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I just noticed how nice you look against that Hang in Focus logo that's in that last picture there.
It's like a very jaunty way I'm standing, which I feel like is not usually me. Like, it's like for once in my life, I knew what to do with my hands. So yeah. I'm glad that moment was captured.
Yeah, you're definitely having a GQ moment. So yeah. Kudos.
I just want to give a shout out. I literally just came from rehearsal for Elaine Romero's Halstead, and it's going to be phenomenal. If people don't know, she's writing about her own personal journey so it's like semi-autobiographical about her husband having a stroke and about what does it mean in terms of being a caregiver, in terms of what it is, and the gorgeousness of like how you learn to love someone when they can't talk. And how can you love someone without words? And it is such a beautiful piece. And so I know we always give like the hype for all our shows, but literally I just came from a rehearsal where the entire room was so moved and, you know, so into it and so blown away by the quality of the work that she's doing. And I had to be like, I'm so sorry everyone's crying. I have to leave to go do this talk show. Keep up the great acting. Keep going. You know, I was like a terrible director. I was like, just keep going. I'll be over there.
Be honest, you were dabbing your eyes on the way into the room.
Oh my God. No, it really is because, you know, she's doing the like most dangerous thing like a playwright can do. Like she's writing about herself. And so it's not a character. It's not what it is. She's writing about, and also she's writing about what does it mean to come to Tucson and to start a life over again, you know? So it is about the most immediate things. So anyway, I just want to hype that because I'm still living in that room of the work that she's done. Catherine Castellanos is our lead who's doing it. I was texting Jesse Sanchez about how much I love Catherine because he works with her at Oregon Shakes. So we're just having a little love fest. So I can't wait to share this with our audience in just a month.
I'm going to say, where will we be sharing this with our audience, John?
It's such a great question. So we'll be sharing it in Romero Fest, right? Romero Fest is and we're going to have some big announcements about Romero Fest coming up soon, but it is a international in terms of the United States and Mexico, theaters over both countries doing readings of her work to be able to celebrate local playwright Elaine Romero and Arizona Theater Company, which is her home theater. She's been the resident playwright for 20 years, which is amazing because everybody else at Arizona Theater Company has worked here for 6 minutes.
2 minutes.
with the exception of Elaine, who has been here since the beginning of time.
Right.
And, you know, we want to celebrate her. We don't get to celebrate local artists ever enough. And so this is the beginning of a dedication to local artists. And we're going big. We're going big at the beginning to be able to do it. So if people want to go to our website, arizonatheater.org, they'll be able to find out about it. But really, really check out Halstead. You know what was amazing about today's rehearsal also, and this is a great moment in the process of a play. Before today, Elaine had never heard the play out loud. She had written it. She had fretted about it. She had sent it. We had talked about it. But there's something amazing the first time you hear a quality actor do your words. And the first time that you're a quality actor do your words when it's about you. You know, I mean, that's, I think, amazing for us to do. So
and
anyway,
where it is in the process, too, is exciting, I think, to contextualize for our audience. So even the title of it right now was basically indicating it's not quite finished yet, right? So she's still doing some updates to it, and it's going to be even better a month from now.
She's writing it like today. You know what I mean? And then sending it over and we're hearing it out for the first time. So I don't know. It's just, you're right. For our audience to understand every play you ever loved, every August Wilson, every Shakespeare, every Tony Kushner play, at some point the playwright heard it out loud for the very, very first time. And for Elaine's Halstead, that's today. So it's an exciting moment to be able to be moving it forward.
Too cool. Well, we have an exciting show for you today for Hang in Focus. Our first guest is Howard Sherman, and we have a little bit of a package to play before he comes on out.
Oh, great.
I wanted to propose a book that was about this play in the 21st century, really in the past 19 years at this point. The most recent being a production in Atlanta by a company called The Theatrical Outfit, which is one of the larger professional companies in Atlanta. And they did a very interesting thing. They did it with a cast of only 10. It's a play that when it premiered on Broadway had a cast of over 40. We don't see that much anymore. But they did it in repertory with the Laramie Project, the story of the murder of Matthew Shepard. And you could literally on one day, on certain days, see the same company do both plays, one at the matinee, one at the evening, which is how I saw it. And to those who might think it arbitrary, not knowing one or the other play or either, when the Laramie Project was created, Moises Kaufman, who leads Tectonic Theater Project and who directed the show, said our town was very much on our mind. He said we would interview people, and as they were realizing the trouble within their own community, they would contrast it by saying, we thought this was our town because our town has become this archetype of a happy American town 100 years ago. It was so important, the parallels, that the description of the way the stage is set at the top of Act 3 in the Laramie Project is identical to the way Thornton Wilder said the stage should be set at the top of Act 3 in our town. There's no missing the parallels. It's not meant to be secret.
I love that we have like a little Atlanta shout out there.
Yes, of course. Yeah, always an Atlanta shout out.
Be able to do it. Well, let's go ahead and bring Howard Sherman on the show. Welcome to the show, Howard, to talk about your book.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God! Of course. So now you're doing publicity everywhere. This is a huge deal, and you've been working on this book for some time, correct?
I've been working on the book. Basically, it's been 2 years since I started from start to publication.
And can you just give us a little insight as to why start this huge journey to be able to the history of one play?
I was thinking about ideas. I had an opportunity to pitch books. An editor asked me if I had any ideas, and so I had to come up with some. And this had popped into my head, and I think it had been brewing unknowingly for at least 10 or 12 years, at least going back to when I saw David Cromer's production off Broadway. And I'd also seen a production in 2013 at Sing Sing Penitentiary. So the play had begun to work on me. And so as I was coming up with ideas, I thought, well, I wonder, our town. Oh, there's probably lots of books on our town. And I couldn't find any. I found one collection of academic essays. Everything that was out there was about Thornton Wilder, and who's an amazing man, did amazing writing, not just for theater, but literature, essays, extraordinary. And so I thought, maybe I could do a biography of our town. And I quickly realized that was insane because the play is 83 years old. It is believed to be the most produced play in the English language, or in American play in the English language. And I would be writing, it would be like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, where as soon as they finish it, they have to start over again.
Right.
So I really narrowed my focus and just decided, what if I just look at 12 productions? What would that tell me? What would that tell people? And that's how it came together.
I so love this. I've told this before, but maybe never to you. Our Town is the show that my parents took me to at Arizona Theater Company when I was 10 or 11 or whatever in Phoenix. And I remember just being blown away by it. And what's amazing is that 1,000 years later, when I became the artistic director, Brian Peterson, who was our resident sound designer at the time, and he passed away last year, he had actually been the sound designer on that show. That really shows like the amount of time that he had been with us, is that, yeah, he had worked on that show, you know, in 1981 or wherever it was that I saw it. And, you know, remembered that production as being it. But I do remember even as a kid, like being blown away, and it truly has stayed with me. You know, I mean, it stayed with me so much. Now I'm like running the damn theater that I went to go see it at to be able to do. So it really, you know, why do you, after doing all this research, why do you think of all plays, our town continues to have this life and continues to have this type of impact?
I think our town works on the artists and the audiences in the exact same way. It's not, I know this sounds strange, we respond to all kinds of theater that we see, but we're really responding to a story that, unless it's immersive theater, it's over there. We empathize with what's going on stage. Our town forces you to project, and it really makes you think about your feelings in relation to the feelings ultimately that Emily is having in Act 3. And you certainly, there are people who don't always connect with the play. I didn't for a long time. I was a latecomer to our town.
Right.
But I think it's so much direct address. It's so much what you experience and what it forces you to think about, that it's not portraying. It's just a prompt to think about aspects of your life. And so when it works for people, it's because it goes really deep, and it has nothing to do with life in New Hampshire at the turn of the 20th century. That's just a placeholder. It's really about much larger things, even at the point that you said, you know, 1,000 years later from when you saw that production. In the play, time is incredibly important. And the stage manager says he's putting a copy of this play in the cornerstone of the new bank, so people 1,000 years from now will know what life was like. It's a big concern of our town. What is in our future, and what will people know in the future?
You know, because I always love this, you included in your book, which I was so grateful to be able to read, some of the first reviews of our town, which were negative, right? Which were a slam. And so it's...
Yeah, I mean, the first review, when it played its one night premiere at the McCarter, there was a Variety review, which said it was this season, something to the effect of the season's biggest waste of talent.
Yeah. Here. It is not only disappointing, but hopelessly slow. It will probably go down as the season's most extravagant waste of fine talent.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I think for all of us that have got poor reviews, it's nice to know that like that's the opening night slam. And, you know, some years later, now you're writing books about how the endless possibility of this play.
Yeah. I mean, this play has always been in production, and you have to remember, it didn't, in the days before the Tony Awards, the big awards were the New York Drama Critics Circle Awards. It lost to Of Mice and Men, certainly a play that we still see now and again, but not as constantly as Our Town is being done.
So in investigating these 12 plays, what did you learn or discover that you didn't know? Like, what was the shocking thing you found out, or the thing that you had questioned in your own mind about how this show works?
Well, the thing I questioned in my own mind, and there is a mea culpa in the last pages of the book, is I had written a piece for American Theater Magazine in 2017 about a whole bunch of our towns that were happening, and I thought it was an interesting confluence. And I did say something to the effect of, I wasn't sure, even though it's done constantly in high schools, I wondered that unless somebody had directly experienced tragedy or loss, could they fully appreciate what this play was really about? And actually, in my very first round of interviews, I was speaking with young people from Theater Baton Rouge and LSU who did separate productions, but sort of paired together. And when a 13-year-old told me that we were talking on the first anniversary of the death of his best friend from suicide, I thought, oh God, I'm so wrong. That there is a constant awareness of death. The fact that there were people talking about the preparation for school shootings and the drills that they've gone through, the loss, the issue of mortality that's in our town. I was lucky. I didn't experience that when I was that young. It's really present. So that's, it's not necessarily the biggest surprise, but it forced me to realize that you can connect with this play at any age, and maybe you don't always get everything. But now I truly believe it is a play. I wouldn't necessarily take, a 9-year-old to it, but I think by the time somebody's 12 or so, they can get our town.
Well, look at the moment that we're in right now. Unfortunately, mortality is something that the entire world has really been faced with, other than the natural things that happen from year to year. But now we're in this pandemic and we're losing more people than ever. And so I think there should be a resurgence of a lot of theaters that would be doing Our Town in the upcoming years, kind of to pay tribute to what is going on right now in this moment, and as humans, how we connect with death.
I constantly quote a line from the play, and I always quote it slightly off, but it really hit me hard when I saw the production at Sing Sing Penitentiary, because the line is, people are all just shut up in little boxes, aren't they? And when you hear those lines, or when you're surrounded by a group of men who have to get done with the show so they can get back to their cells on time, that resonates differently. And look at us right now. We are all shut up in little boxes. That is what our world has been. Unlike in Act 3, where there is no going back, we have all been isolated. We are all constantly, every day, thinking about the things we can't do, shouldn't do, it isn't safe to do. We do need to think about others. That remains important. But we're going to get another chance to realize even the small things about life that we may not have appreciated from spending a year inside our homes, our apartments. So I think it's very pertinent.
Oh, all the things I can't wait to do are the most boring things in the world. You know what I mean? Just to be able to go to a restaurant, go to a sporting event, go see other people, to let my daughter, it doesn't matter who she plays with at the park, like all these things that, be able to do. I'm fascinated by this production. Tell us just a little bit about the different productions that you're talking about in the book. Like what's the range of productions?
The range is in years, it's 2002 to 2019. In terms of the scale of production, it's amateur young people under the age of 18, and then college students 18 to 22. These are the productions in Baton Rouge, up to the last Broadway production, which starred Paul Newman as the stage manager. In between, you've got everything from David Cromer's production, which ended up playing in 6 cities over the course of a number of years. The Looking Glass Theater production, which is really fascinating. They're really company driven, and they did a 20-year reunion of bringing back all the original company members that they could to be in our town. So everybody was around 40 years old. The parents were around 40 years old. The children were around 40 years old, but it reunited all of them, and they were able to bring not just their personal histories together, but the life of the theater reflected through our town. After all, what do we do in this business? We're constantly bringing together communities of people, often who don't know each other. Maybe there's a few who have prior connections. We build a community, and hopefully when that community is built to present something to other people, that community is a caring, supportive, thoughtful group of people. And so theater models on what some people want to see Grover's Corners as. So the range is, I hope, very broad. There's a couple of productions from the UK, one from Manchester, one from London, because it's not just an American play. In fact, there is, given how little theatrical production there is right now, there is a production running right now. It opened 2 weeks ago at the Queensland Theatre in Brisbane, Australia. And they've opened their season. It's their first time able to have full audience capacity back, and they're doing our town.
Wow, that's what they chose as their first time back to be able to do.
Yep. And it just speaks to the fact that, it's interesting, given that I've been working on this book as we've really had a racial reckoning in America, and certainly within our chosen field. I realized I thought to myself at one point, what an idiot I am. I'm writing a play about a white guy, about a white community in 1938. What could possibly be less important in this moment? And it was reassuring to me as I talked to the artists in the book, how everyone, even if they had that view of it starting the production, but some people, they took the job because they needed the job, but they questioned it. They questioned it a lot. They all seem to come to the same place. I mean, Chanel, hearing what you say about it being done a lot, I certainly hope it will be done a lot, because I find a lot in the play. There are many other great plays, and there are many new plays that have to get out when we're producing at full strength again. But I do think there's something special in this play, and I'm really eager to see how, frankly, theater companies of color, are they going to take a look at our town? Our town has been done with racially mixed casts, at least going back to 1968, when there was a completely colorblind production in Los Angeles, and the gender of the stage manager has been played by a woman going back into the 70s. The other great thing about this play is you need to keep to the text and you need to keep to the idea, but it's not stuck exactly either in the time it's set or the time it was written. And that's part of Thornton Wilder's genius, was that he created a scaffolding on which on which artists can place so much.
You're an artist. You can include yourself in that we.
I know you wrote a book. You're here selling a book. Yeah.
Sean's not hiring me to come down and direct our town, though, is he?
Yeah. Well, no,
I put him on the spot there. I'm not a director. Don't worry, Sean. You won't be getting my resume.
I was telling Howard in the green room how with United Colors of Arizona Theater, we're kind of planning our first, season or so at some point, and that our town was one of the things that we were looking at, and how beautiful it would be to show like an all diverse, BIPOC cast being able to attack that work, and how it still holds up to support that.
And what's interesting is that the show has also been done in a variety of languages, even here in the US. There is a production in the book, the Miami New Drama production from 2017, which was a trilingual production in English, great. Spanish, and Creole. And those are the predominant languages of Miami. And so the Gibbs family, the mother was from Haiti, and the kids understood Creole. The father wasn't really good at it. It was a Black family. The Webb family was a Latinx family. And like so many Latinx families in the United States, at home together, they only spoke Spanish. And so there is this opportunity to transform the play by keeping the words, but just with these little things, or the way certain lines ping out at you as you hear them based on the context, where you are, what's happening in the world. So I hope when there are new art towns, more people bring in the world around them, so that there's not petticoats and starched shirts, and that we blow all that dust off of it, because some people have done it and they've done it really successfully. And there's so much more that can be done without ever not being true to the spirit of this play. And the spirit of this play is all there is. It's not about plot. It is about spirit.
So yeah, what's the like farthest out our town version that you've heard of? Like, is there one set in space? Is there one like what's? I mean,
I have not heard of anything like that. I mean, I imagine there might have been, let's just say, inventive college productions somewhere that we don't know about. Major professional productions, the estate keeps an eye on what's being done. And as open as they are to innovation, it is still about doing the play. The estate is run by Thornton Wilder's nephew, Tappan Wilder. And Tappan, unlike a lot of estates, allows this flexibility, but you've still got to be doing his uncle's play and not distracting from it. Because when you put it in space, you got to have a lot of stuff to show that you're in space. This is a play that's done without scenery. The first words of the script are no curtain, no scenery. This play is always in space in a way. It doesn't necessarily need to be in outer space.
And it's amazing though that his nephew, right? He has allowed all of these productions to go forward, because we hear so many, like the Edward Albee estate shutting down anything that is not essentially a museum piece.
Well, first of all, that's not true.
That's not true?
That's not true. And we can have another discussion about Edward Albee, whose estate has been misconstrued on certain things. But Edward himself was very specific about what he wanted. Right. So it's not that they're not doing anything that Edward wouldn't have done. But yes, Tappan has allowed things, even to the point, there's an Our Town opera by Ned Rory. And interestingly, Thornton Wilder refused a request to have an opera done during his lifetime. And the person who wanted to write that opera was Aaron Copland. Wow. So Tappan even is doing things that his uncle may not have necessarily wanted or explicitly hadn't wanted, because we need these plays to live. I mean, we know this. We know sometimes estates get very locked into a singular vision. Mm-hmm. That's not the case here. If you talk with the estate, explain your approach, why you want it to be, how you're treating the play, there's usually not the same kind of pushback that you might get from certain other estates.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So tell us, where can we get this book? Where does this book exist? How can people purchase it?
Well, it's a real book. So bookstores and online. It's not necessarily carried everywhere. It's an academic book, though I'm not an academic, so nobody should feel that they need a degree to read this book. I don't have one. And so it's certainly on Amazon. You can go to the website of Methuen Drama, which is bloomsbury.com. You can get it there, or just go to your local bookstore, support your local bookstore, and just ask them to order it in for you. And then hopefully they'll say, well, gee, this is an interesting book. We should have a couple on our shelves.
Yeah, well played, well played. So we ask every guest to bring a word to the show, just about like where they are in terms of like emotionally or physically, just a word that's sticking with them. Do you have one for today?
I will confess that I forgot this request, but since we'll play word association, I would say I am questioning.
And why questioning? It's a good one. Actually, no one has had that word yet. So in a whole year.
We've had a lot of words.
I didn't know it was a contest.
Yeah, you win,
but why questioning? Because what is the world going to be like when we return? What is theater going to be like when we return? And what will my place in theater and in the world be when we return? There's no sure way to know. I devoted a year primarily to the book, and then I was forced to spend a year focusing mostly on the book. And so what happens when I can go back to work or get out and start actually talking to people in person about this play? Will I write another book? They're all questions. I didn't want to say uncertainty, because uncertainty has a hint of negative, but I think we should all be questioning. I think we should always be questioning. Because if you listen, I mean, I did this book, I talked to about 115 people. I asked them questions, and then I sat back and listened. And the only reason this book, if it is deemed by people to be a success, the only reason it's a success is because I asked questions, and then I had the extraordinarily candid generosity of these people who leapt into telling me, in some cases, highly personal stories with a guy they'd never met. And so I have 115 or so collaborators on this book.
No, that's phenomenal.
That is
Can you
amazing.
say what was your favorite production?
Oh, I have no favorite production. In fact, I was very explicit with the book that I take no position on any of the productions in the book. I don't make the claim that necessarily any of these are the best production, because there's simply too many. Nobody can be definitive. And my point was, this isn't a book about what I think of our town. There's a little of it in the introduction and the epilogue, but I just wanted to be the vehicle through which people could hear the thoughts of, as I'm fond of saying, people who spent time living in Grover's Corners, and I mean that metaphorically, of course, but who may have spent a month, 2 months, 3 months, in some cases several years, in this state of mind that our town requires. And I had a feeling it would be deeper than, a lot of people love doing plays and they talk about their part in the play and what they got to do or someone they got to work with. Nobody talks with our town about anything but our town.
That's beautiful. That's, for us to take just not about ourselves, right? But about the bigger thing.
Yeah. I mean, if people want to know what I think, they can go on my website and contact me. But I could have done this book about 12 different productions, 12 entirely different productions. And I suspect I'd have arrived at the same place, even though the specific stories would have varied. With a play that's done thousands of times a year for 83 years. The one thing I regret was that I didn't have the resources to include an international foreign language production. Yeah. Because it does get done all around the world.
Well, that's in your second book.
Yeah, that's the sequel. Yeah.
I will not be doing a sequel to Another Day's Begun, because who wants to buy a book called Yet Another Day's Begun? I've made my journey. I do hope that maybe this will prompt other people to think about our town and prompt other people to write about our town when they realize that there's these 1 or 2 books of academic essays and there's still room for a lot to be said. And I bet people have some really interesting insights and personal experiences of this play that I didn't hear in writing this book.
Sure. Oh, Howard, it is so great to have you on the show. It's so great to talk about this book. I can't wait for everyone to be able to read it. I had such a fantastic time. I so appreciate you sending me an early copy. I loved spending time with it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on. It's great to visit Arizona.
Yeah, I know, right? Doesn't it feel a little warmer? It's like
I'm wearing a denim shirt. I thought it was appropriate.
It is. And I'm over here in a turtleneck because I'm a native Arizona and I'm freezing. So
I know, we're like it's in the 70s. So that's for us. That's hoodie. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on our show, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. I hope so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Howard.
It's so fascinating. I never knew one play could have so much diversity in it that was written so long ago. That's exciting.
Well, there are so few plays, it feels like. I mean, it's like Shakespeare over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, there are other classics that are worthy of reimagining in terms of doing it. So I think it's fantastic to be able to do. And I just have such a sweet spot for our town after being there. And knowing that Brian Peterson did the sound design on it, in 1981.
That was a nice little nugget that we just learned. I didn't know that either. I was like, wait, what?
I know. And I didn't know it either. I got here, I told that story at about 1,000 donor events. And then he kind of pulled me aside one time and he was like, hey, I worked on that show. I just got here. was one of my first shows. And so, it's amazing. It just shows that, the legacy of what happens to any production. We have no idea who's in the audience. We have no idea how it changes them or how it affects or drastically affects the life choices they make because of it. So,
and that's the power of theater, right? So,
yeah, right there to be able to do it. All right.
We have exciting guest.
Yeah, go for it.
We have Marshall Shore, who's also known as the hip historian. I'm so excited about this guest. He's somebody we've wanted to come on for quite some time. So, Marshall, turn on your camera and say hello to the people.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hey there.
Oh, my gosh. Such a great little discussion you guys were having.
I know.
We figured you would be a great guest for this particular episode because I knew you would find that fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it really starts talking about, any place you are is basically all these microcosms of just these little communities and how they're existing, evolving, handling each other. And that's really what the play is about.
For sure.
So what go for it, Janelle.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just so excited that I like hear you. So actually, what a great transition though that we had, of course, Marshall on with Our Town to talk about our town. So
indeed, because there's lots to talk about our town. And actually, years ago, I curated an exhibit over on Grand Avenue at one point called Our Town because of people's representation of the community of Phoenix.
Well, we should watch a little bit of something that would give the people
oh my gosh
of what's to come, and then we're gonna
Will
dive
forewarn me about this.
Well, everybody turn off your camera so we can take a look, and we'll be right back.
So my name is Marshall Shore. I am also known as the hip historian. Every year, February 14th, we have a big celebration for ourselves right here in Arizona for Statehood Day. And, back in 2012, we had our centennial for 100 years of statehood. And someone gave me 15 minutes on that February 14th of 2012 to be right in front of the Capitol. And I chose to talk about one of my most favorite events. It was called Mask of the Yellow Moon. Now, it was started originally back in 1926 by Charlotte Hall. Now, if any of you go to Prescott, you'll be able to go visit her house, which has now been turned into a museum. It then moved to Montgomery Stadium, which was our first stadium in Arizona. It was over on 7th Street and Roosevelt. And all kinds of games were held there, including our very first bowl game, which, I sure wish somebody would bring that back because that's a bowl game I could sure sink my teeth into. And what would you expect from the salad bowl? Why no other than the queen of the salad bowl, riding in her very own salad bowl with her spoon and fork to serve with. Now, the Mask of Yellow Moon was woven through the curriculum for the entire school. So you had everybody getting into the act. You had the debate club doing skits. You had really large, lavish sets. You had costumes designed by students and made by home ec. And I was lucky enough to find a few dresses in a box, because you never know where the next bit of the story is coming from. And so you see this dress here. Well, I was doing a presentation for Arizona's First Families. And when I was done, this woman, Norma, tapped me on the shoulder and said, I've got something to show you. So we went out to her car and she pulled out this dress. Now, this dress was her mother's dress that she wore in the Mask of the Yellow Moon. But what was even better was she had the programs that went along with it. And we weren't sure whether it was 1928 or 29. So really early in the development of the Mask of the Yellow Moon. So I always like to tell that story because you never know. The Mask of the Yellow Moon was touted right up there with Mardi Gras as something that everyone in the country should go see.
I did not know any of that.
Well, that's kind of what I do is I get to talk about things that are off the people's radar because that's the stuff that intrigues me.
Can I ask you, Chanel, in that video segment, was there like 2 seconds where the words "What is he wearing" was up on the I was like, are we like subtly placing that in our audience's mind just for like a brief moment? Yeah.
Well, that's normally a question. Even my mom asks me, what are you wearing? And then I go into it and she's like, why are you wearing that? And I'm like, because I want to.
So what is the impetus behind this outfit today that you're wearing?
So this is vintage Phoenix Union High band uniform.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Too cool.
So I have the matching pants as well. And so, yeah, so I mean, I love to, I spent a decade in New York City. And so I learned, well, even before that, I like to dress up. But then New York kind of gave me this whole palette of, oh my gosh, if you wear it, own it, and you'll look good. And so that's what I do. I've got a variety of, I've got about 8 jackets that have been decorated by local artists, all on different themes, ranging from water in Arizona to Route 66, movies that have been done here. Gosh, right. A famous gay artist who was here in the 50s. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
I so appreciate what you do, because as someone who grew up here, the knock that gets on Arizona and it gets Phoenix is that people don't know our history. They're not really from here. They're not here year round, which is not all true. But I do feel like we sometimes don't own or even know our history in the way that like a Chicago or a Philadelphia or somewhere else, or where they just kind of own it in a different way.
Right. I mean, when I first moved, so I've been in Phoenix for 21 years. And when I first got here, I'll keep hearing about how there was no history.
Yeah.
And initially I bought into that until I started traveling. And then I realized, and it didn't matter whether I was just going down the street or down to the border, it was like everywhere I went, I kept finding amazing people, places, and stories. And I realized it's not just, there is history here, but you've got to dig for it. It's not, in a lot of cases, it's not like some of those other cities that have lots of plaques and things like that around that tell you the history. Here, you've still got to kind of dig for it.
Yeah, no, here it feels like the city was built last year. So there's no, we're happy that the sidewalks are big, but there isn't plaques everywhere about like where things are to be able to do.
Right.
So
I do a second Saturday walking tour of downtown. And what's great is as we're walking around downtown, talking about history, looking at buildings from like the 20s and 30s, you can look down the street and see cranes, plural, building these new high rises. And I really appreciate the fact that we still have so much of that history left.
So what's like a great nugget of like a great history story that the average person doesn't know? Like the salad bowl, which is amazing that there was a woman riding around a salad bowl with a giant, like that. That in itself, we could stop there. But like, what's another nugget you love to tell people?
Oh, one of my favorite stories is actually about a comedian who was here in town. Her name was Rusty Warren. She was here in the 50s, and she was a classically trained pianist played in a little piano bar that was not much larger than the piano. And so I found a record of hers in a thrift shop. I'd never heard her name. So of course I run off and Google it. And I learned that she has 15 albums to her credit. Several of them have gone gold. And then there's this button that says contact me. So I did. And so started just emailing back and forth, phone calling. At that point, she was living in Hawaii, and she wound up moving to Palm Springs. And so then it was like I would have lunch with her once in a while, which was a blast. And so she had an amazing history. Her big hit was in the early 60s, and it was a song called Knockers Up. And it was all about, hey, women, hoist them high, hoist them proud. Doesn't matter whether they're large or small. And so I had the opportunity to actually work with her archive a couple of years ago because the Library of Congress was admitting her and calling her the birth mother of the sexual revolution for a song she was doing right here.
Oh my God. And
so I always joke about how we need a bust of Rusty Warren in downtown.
A bust. No
ding,
fun
ding, ding. Exactly. I mean, she is still around. And she is such a hoot.
That's amazing. So these walking tours, when are they? How can people get?
So I just found out, actually, my March is just sold out. If people go to my website, I'm actually going to be talking later on to my co-host to see if we can add a few more in March, because, kind of after March, maybe one in April, but then it's going to get a little too hot to be walking around downtown. So maybe we'll do a few more in March and April to just kind of meet demand, because yeah, it literally sold out about an hour ago. I was like, dang. So.
What is your website for people that want to?
It is hiphistorian.com.
That's
So
phenomenal.
there is one story I hope I could ask you to tell on air. So in the first time that I met Marshall, I was like fascinated. Like it was supposed to be just a quick meet and greet about potentially coming on Hang and Focus, and then all this beautiful knowledge came forth, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. But the one about the hotel that was built next, the woman that wanted to stay in a place and then wasn't welcome, so then she built.
Oh, the Eisendrath house.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so back in the 30s, 20s, 30s, you had a lot of socialites coming here for weather like we're having today, because this time in Chicago is not as beautiful as it is now. And so Rose Eisendrath was part of that society set. She was the widow of a glove manufacturer. And so she came here for a retreat with some girlfriends, and she went to go check into her hotel, and they said, ma'am, sorry, you can't check into our hotel because you're Jewish. And so she went off and said, okay. She bought a hunk of land and had an adobe mansion built on it. And then she invited the manager of that hotel to come have dinner with her in her new estate. And since that moment, the hotel has been open to Jews because he realized, hey, you know, we are people. Right. So it was really great. I mean, and so they actually redid the house a few years ago. It is actually, I want to say on Curry Road, right behind the Arizona Heritage Center. The Sorow Foundation redid it. It looks beautiful. I know they've been having issues with COVID. It was open. You could tour. I know they've had weddings there and different events like that. But I love that there's this little nugget kind of just tucked off that if you drive by, you'll be like, oh, what's that house? And never know the story of.
Yeah, and I've driven by that house. I know exactly where it is. And so
and it's a beautiful house. Oh my gosh. Well, and then you talk about the modern history of it. It at one point became kind of an artist squatter hangout. There was a bad zombie movie film there. I've got friends who talk about going to see a Meat Puppets concert on the back patio. So it has this really great history of even when it was no longer functioning as a house, how it became this home to the arts.
Yeah. Oh, so now are your walks always in the same spot? Are you in different parts? Like, are you giving the full tour of the city? How do they work?
Well, so basically I started doing walking tours because I normally do a bus tour and realized in this moment, no one's going to hop on a bus with a bunch of strangers. And so it was like, well, what do we do? And so it's like, we talked about doing a walking tour. And I was like, well, you know, if you're wearing a mask, how do you hear somebody if you're wearing a mask? Right. And then we said, you know, those little speakers that people wear on their hips with microphones. So we actually put that on under the mask so people can hear us. So the walking tour we do outside in downtown Phoenix is about a 2-mile hike. It's about a 2-hour tour. And so we're not running through it. It's a nice leisurely pace, and we stop and talk about some of the buildings. And it's been so interesting to see that compared to a bus tour, where with a bus tour, it's like boom, boom, boom. It's all these great building after great building, great story after great story. And now there's time to kind of process, to think about things, to suddenly reach out and maybe touch one of those buildings.
Right.
So it's a very different experience, which has been a lot of fun.
Do you have like another, can we, you know, impose upon you for one more great story? Cause I love you so much. Yeah.
I can go on for hours.
I know. I'm just you know, I know we have things to do, but like, I want another great story.
So I was just doing a bit with Cronkite School of Journalism. And so they were like, well, you know, we want to do some fun spots. And I was like, you know, let's go to Greenwood Cemetery. And so we actually got kicked out of Greenwood, which I probably shouldn't say, but you know, yes, we got kicked out. That's all I'm going to say. But we were there to talk about a 1906 gender pioneer. So it was Nikolai Durailan, who was a Russian gentleman who moved from Russia to Chicago, got himself a good government job, then got married, then got divorced because he was a little too amorous with chorus girls.
Happens.
Wife number 2 was a chorus girl. So after the marriage, he winds up getting tuberculosis. So like so many folks, they came to Arizona for their health because of we had clean air. And so he comes here and it doesn't go so well. He winds up passing away. As they're readying him for burial, they discover that Nikolai was born a woman. And so because his will said that he was leaving all his money to his wife, the court said, oh, all his money went to his estranged mother. Now, he was very likely Russian aristocracy, may or may not have been a spy. It's one of these things that the more you start learning about his story, it would be an amazing movie or a musical. But so when I found the story, it's like I went to go visit his gravesite. There was no headstone. So we actually raised money in the community to get him a headstone that was installed earlier this year.
Oh, that's incredible.
And then working with a trans community, like Trans Spectrum, and actually a group out of San Francisco, developed a headstone that was very true to who he was, but still marking where he is, so his story can kind of live on.
Gotcha. And so, where is that? Where is his grave?
So Greenwood Cemetery is over like on 27th Avenue and Van Buren.
Oh, I know exactly where a lot of my family is buried there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's opened up in 1906. It's basically multiple cemeteries kind of that over the years have combined. So.
Phenomenal.
I mean, that might be the very first like historical like LGBTQIA story for Arizona that's famously known.
I mean, I think so. I mean, basically when he passed away, I mean, his story went above the fold front page across the globe from Bisbee to Australia. Wow. And then his name kind of got lost through time. And it was funny when we actually did a commemoration for him, the Arizona Republic picked it up, and then USA Today picked it up, and a Russian gentleman who lives in Boston, at this point, he has a book that just went to the publishers that is all about Nikolai in Russian. So
that is so neat. So tell the people about your Arizona History Happy Hour.
Oh my gosh. So basically in this moment, I realized part of a lot of what I do is kind of social history. And so I share stories with people and people share their stories with me. And I realized during COVID that was not happening. So started actually almost a year ago going online and doing Arizona Virtual Happy Hour. And so because it's a happy hour, we always have a cocktail that is done by PJ over at the Valley Ho. And we basically spend about an hour or so talking about Arizona history. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had on Carver, the old Carver High School, which was the segregated high school in South Phoenix. Yeah. Last night, we talked, it's every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We talked about Christown, Legend City, Copper Bell. So, I mean, it's a mix of kind of new and old things. So really try to kind of mix it up. And we do it in trivia style so that it's engaging. That it's like, it asks people, hey, you know, what is the answer? And sometimes it's a trick question. Sometimes maybe it's all of them, but then we kind of go through, but the beauty is we then go through and talk about the answer and tell you those stories.
And how would one, join your happy hour?
So if they're on Facebook, they can look at Marshall Shore Hip Historian. It is also on YouTube and Twitch. Again, if they go to my website, which is hiphistorian.com, they can find links there to get to watch it. And so, yeah, so I mean, we're going to be doing it through the next year. So I'm almost finishing up March, which is going to be a fun month as well. And again, a wide variety of people. And again, kind of like our town, talking about not necessarily, I mean, sometimes it's a big name. Sometimes it's just somebody who was here.
Right.
So that's kind of the fun of it. I mean, for me, it's all about those stories of those almost unsung heroes.
Yeah. I love that. So fantastic. So as you know, we ask every guest coming on to give us a word. I'm excited to hear what your word is. What's a word you'd like to share with our audience about where you're at?
So I would say community.
Great.
I mean, in this moment, it's like I've been redefining what that communities are. I mean, it's like I've got friends that I knew almost tangentially that in this moment of COVID, it'll be like, they're like, hey, I need to chat with somebody. Hey, I'm available, so let's chat. And so I've been able to make friends with folks and get to know them at a lot deeper level than I had before. Starting to also look at, with Happy Hour, looking at different communities and how do we tell some of those stories?
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. Okay. So I have a house full of stuff. And so one of the things I like to do during Happy Hour is we talk about, hey, here's something I have in my house and here is the story about why it's there. Because everything has a reason for why it's here. And so this is a Viewmaster. That probably, I mean, you may have played with this when you were a kid.
Mine was red.
So
Yes.
Okay. So then there was also this one. So the red one is a little bit later. This is Model G. So Model G was actually designed by Charles Harrison, who was a Carver graduate.
Really?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
So, I mean, he was the first African-American industrial designer hired by Sears. So he did things like the first plastic wastebasket.
So that's,
I mean,
So
a lot
yeah.
of people don't realize how many inventions really were created by African Americans. And then when Black History Month comes out, they're like, you also did what? You also did what? So that's
Yeah,
really
so I'm
exciting.
actually giving these down to Carver because they have a few things that he designed, but they didn't have the Viewmasters. So actually next week I'm taking these down there so they can have them. And they've got a little display of his stuff there. So I talk about, I mean, I actually did one program several years ago downtown, and it was all about designers in Phoenix. So you had a Native American fashion designer, Lloyd Kiva-New. We talked about Glenn Guyette, who is a neon and sign designer here in town. And then we talked about Charles Harrison. So it's like, who knew such powerhouses of design right here?
I know. I could listen to this for like.
I'm like, you'll have to do another appearance on Hanging Focus at some point. I'll do some research and be like, I know there's some stories behind like the Frank Lloyd Wright House and some other stuff. So we'll
there are so many stories. That's the fun thing is we never run out of stories.
Yeah. Well, and we're in a community that doesn't know them. You know what I mean? So there's like a real joy also to be able to remind everybody of the actual history that's here.
Right. I mean, and I will still, even if a building is no longer there, I still talk about it as though it's there, because to me, those stories are what bring that soul to Arizona. I mean, I really started using the word terroir when I talk about Arizona because so many people move. So terroir being a wine term, where if you have the same grape growing in two different places, they'll taste differently because of the soil. And I'm like, so many people came here and did things they could never have done where they were from.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, Arizona gave them the superpower to do these things. Like Rusty Warren, she was from the East Coast. She came here and basically created so much change from playing the piano and singing some songs.
Yeah.
And a lot of change came from within our borders.
It's great. Oh, it's phenomenal. All right, we'll have to have you back. So like
for sure.
Collecting more stories. But Marshall, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you
for chatting with us. And thank you I can't wait to do your happy hour and your walking tour.
For sure.
All right. Thank you all so much. Always great to see you, Chanel. So
it's always good to see you too. Thank you. And yes, we'll be seeing each other soon.
Very good. Look forward to that. Have a great night.
You too. I could literally listen to him all day.
I know. Well, we'll have him back. We'll have him back to be able to talk more about it. Oh yeah, so great. And this hour flew by. So
quickly when you're having fun. We have a great guest coming up next week.
We have Tony Award winner and
Yes.
Netflix director Kenny Leon will be on the show to talk with us about it.
I'm really
And then the week after, we have the author of Nina Simone. She's done other things since then, but for our audiences to be able to get to know her, Christina Ham coming up. So 2 exciting weeks of talking with real A-level people.
So we're excited to keep bringing you talented individuals to hang in focus. And I guess we'll go to our call board. We have some exciting things coming up with a beautiful Black History Month tribute to our very own Colleen Rogenson over at ASU Gammage.
Great.
Stay tuned.
Thank you, everybody.
This is your call board for February 12th through the 18th. Hi, I'm Will Rogers, Community Engagement Manager at ATC, and thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed hearing Howard Sherman and Marshall Shore on this week's episode of Hang and Focus Live with Sean Daniels. Now let's see what's coming up on future episodes. Next week, Tony Award-winning director Kenny Leon will sit down with Sean for a talk. And on February 26th, Christina Ham, the playwright of Nina Simone, Four Women, will join us on the show. And on March 5th, with Romero Fest in high gear, we'll be joined by several past winners of the National Latinx Playwriting Awards. Okay, now let's head on over to the education station because I think we have someone special joining us. Jasmine, welcome.
Hello, hi Will. Hello, call board.
Hi. What's going on in the department?
So many exciting things. We especially have a lot happening with ATC Teen, so I will dive into that. This weekend, our ATC Teen Improv group, FUSI, the Future Underground Society of Arizona Improv, this coming weekend they're performing with Intercity Improv, and you can catch their virtual show. We will share it on our Facebook page, so you can catch it there, or you can go over to the Intercity Improv Facebook page.
Okay, well, so what do you guys have coming up for classes? I missed classes. I have to have people around. You got anything exciting?
Yes, so our ATC Teen classes are starting back up this month. The first thing is we have an Improv 201 class. So if you've done a little bit of improv before, doesn't matter where your experience is from, with us or with others, if you've just done a little bit of improv, you are set to jump in and join Improv 201. Also on Fridays, because Fridays really are class day, jam-packed with lots of fun. Each Friday of the month, so we got the first Friday, second Friday is slightly different. The first Friday of every month will be what we're calling Open ATC Teen Hour. It's a chance to be a little more social because I think we lose the social aspect of ATC Teen being on Zoom and on the internet. It's a little bit harder. So we'll do lots of fun theater activities, theater games, and also just spontaneously read plays. We'll just read them out loud.
This is like a place for like the geekiest theater geeks.
Yes, the
love it. I'm there.
No, you can come. You can totally come. So then we have the next week is our book club, which is a little more serious, where we really we've read a play ahead of time, and we're going to dive into analyzing it, picking it apart. Sometimes we'll talk to the playwright, but we'll read 2 different plays each month. Then we have what we call Small Project Friday, which is a time for you to come and share any idea, project. It's a time where you can say, hey, I'm really looking for a collaborator on this idea I have, or you need to brainstorm, or you want to get feedback on your project, or you just want to talk about it so that it makes you do it because you need accountability. And I think this is such a time when everybody's isolated that so many people are working on their own kinds of projects, which is really valid and really wonderful. But then sometimes you start to miss that collaborative feeling that we all have when we're creating in the theater together. So this is an opportunity to kind of have that sense of collaboration, even if you're continuing to work on a project on your own in your own bedroom. And then each month on the last Friday, we'll also have a masterclass. And those masterclasses will be with guest artists that come in to work with Arizona Theater Company. So as we have exciting readings and other public performances coming up, we'll have guest artists from those shows teaching the ATC Teen masterclasses.
I want to know more. How do I get involved? How do I actually get involved?
So you should come to the ATC Teen Spring Kickoff Meeting, which is going to be on February 19th. And that is the time to hear more about all of the things that I just shared. I'll talk about them in depth. I'm teaching the masterclass that day, and then we'll go into talking about all of the different projects that are coming up. So come on the 19th. If you want to RSVP to that, just email us at education@arizonatheater.org or check out our Instagram and DM us there.
Awesome. Thank you for coming by today. I love talking to you. I can't wait till we're in an office together again. And that's all.
Wonderful.
Head on over and tell people what's happening in theaters across Arizona. This week, we'd like to feature 2 exciting productions. Phoenix Theater Company has Murder for Two, written by Kellen Blair and my good old college buddy, Joe Canosian. And it's featuring Seth Tucker and Toby Yatsu in their outdoor theater. So check that out. COVID-19 protocols are observed. And up at Arizona Broadway Theater, you can catch Walk in the Line as Scott Moreau sings the songs of Johnny Cash. That sounds like a lot of fun. And COVID-19 protocols are observed there as well. Tucson, we haven't forgotten you. There's nothing to highlight this week, but you have exciting productions coming up from Rogue Theater and some of our other friends in Tucson. So stay tuned. Now it is time for what has quickly become one of my favorite moments of these recent call boards. It's the ATC Spotlight on Black History Month. this year we have decided to feature a different person working in Arizona, a producer, a actor, a artist of any kind that's making a difference on Arizona stages or to Arizona theaters and communities right now, today, making history today. And this week we are going to turn our spotlight on a person. I am a huge fanboy now. I've gone down a rabbit hole watching hours and hours of footage of this amazing woman. This week we turn our spotlight on Colleen Jennings Rogenson, ASU Vice President for Cultural Affairs and Executive Director of ASU Gamage. Here are a few anecdotes from her storied career that illustrate her passion for the arts and her belief in its power to change our communities, both now and into the future.
Of the 54 years of this institution, I have been its executive director for more than half that time. We pride ourselves on presenting not only what's great about Broadway and the great Broadway tradition, but we also like to be the risk takers in the Broadway field. When Angels in America in 1994 just had finished, it was starting its tour, and the big discussion was Angels would be an East Coast and a West Coast thing. The middle of the country, which we are considered, would not be suitable for that. And we pushed and pushed and pushed. And so Tempe was the first place outside of New York and LA that Angels in America came.
You're in France. You're all over the place. The Bolshoi Ballet, their big American tour where they bought La Bayadere. I got to go to Russia, negotiate the contract, select what the repertoire would be, select which ballerina would come and not come. And you haven't lived until you're in a Russian studio with Nina Anishvili, the most arguably amazing ballerina. And the Russian ballet mistress says, we're doing another show right now. We're rehearsing this. Go change your clothes. Colleen is here. Show her Don Juan.
Since we have been in the Australia Correctional Facility for now 25 years, and we work with young, old, and middle-aged women, teaching them to take their mask of victimhood off, and become productive members coming out into the community through singing, dancing, painting, writing. And our program in the Australia jails has been the one with the lowest recidivism rate. So people go through this arts-based program and say, okay, I am important, I do have a voice, and I have something to contribute. I was fortunate enough to be selected as one of 3 co-chairs for the state of Arizona to help craft Joe Biden's arts policy, which is on page 28 of the 98-page platform. Advocacy is something that we should be accustomed to doing all the time. Going to DC is quite a thrill, and it can be overwhelming. And I tell people who go for the first time, I say, understand, the senator and the representative that you're going to speak with, they work for you.
So thank you, Colleen, for everything you do to bring art and advocacy to our state and to the stages of our country. We appreciate you. And because of you, I learned about Liz Lerman's treadmill tapes, a series of conversations with people like you, where you had a story that involved Diana Ross and ended like this.
Funny thing, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm working for the NFL, landing a helicopter on a field, dealing with the governor, and interpreting French English.
So folks, if you want to learn what that story was and just hear amazing conversations about theater and our cultural responsibility and everything else, just life, check out those treadmill tapes. They're pretty spectacular. That's all we have time for today, but please join us back here next week for Hang in Focus. It's every week at the same time. Please like us and follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Do all the things, ring the bell, hit the button, do the like. We'd really appreciate it.